Good evening, and welcome to the July 23rd, 2019 Truckee Town Council meeting. Judy, may we have the roll call, please? Or Sarah, okay.
Councilmember Abrams?
Here.
Anna Klopstad?
Here.
Pallavi?
Here.
Vice Mayor Goodwin?
Here.
And Mayor Tierman?
Here.
Thank you.
At this point, I'm going to ask an esteemed and reputable attorney in town, Jim Porter, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. At this time, before we get started with our presentations and discussion items on the agenda, we always have an opportunity for public comment on anything that is not listed on the agenda. So if anyone has public comment on anything not on the agenda tonight, please step forward and you'll have 3 minutes. Yep, and if you wouldn't mind stating your name.
Hi, my name is Zach Nash. This is the first time I've been to a town council meeting. I've grown up in Truckee my whole life, but I surf the river pretty often down in Reno, and it's been something on my mind as far as maybe Truckee would consider putting in some kind of a water park. I know Bend, Oregon, and different states around the U.S. are putting them in, as well as Iowa has one now. So I wasn't sure how to get the ball rolling, but wanted to at least start here. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate your comments. And yeah, I'm sure we can give that some consideration and maybe follow up with our staff to see what that might entail, what that might look like. Great. Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, I was here earlier this year with...
State your name, please.
Oh, my name is Eiley Scott. I was here earlier with my class. It was the 4th and 5th grade Acres and Brisbane crew from CELS, and we are here on banning plastic straws in Truckee. And I really think that it's really good. And so, I know, thank you so much, because during the presentation, you were very thumbs up, excited. So thank you for that. And I really do think it's very important. So, yeah.
Thank you, Eiley. So I believe, yes, we were all unanimous in our support for that, and I think we have, Kim, you might be able to tell us where we're at with the efforts.
I can tell you, give you an update that there's a meeting set up in 2 weeks from now to begin the stakeholder meetings with the businesses who would be affected by not only the straws, but any of the single-use styrofoam, etc. So we are going to work through the process in the Truckee collaborative way, and that's getting started in a couple weeks.
Terrific. Great to hear. Thank you, Kim. So,
Mayor Tierman, may I say something to this? I just wanted to let you know that the state of California has already banned plastic straws, and I highly encourage you, whenever enjoying a beverage at any restaurant, whether it's in Truckee or anywhere in California, to kindly remind them of that. And there is a $25 per occurrence violation that you could also remind them of.
thank you, Anna. So good things do take time, but we are working on it. So appreciate you coming back to remind us of the support for the ban, and we will make sure that we get there. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to our first presentation this evening, which is item 5.1, a presentation of appreciation to the Town Council from the Citizens Climate Lobby with the Washington, D.C. lobbying effort update. Deirdre.
Good evening, Mayor, Chairman, members of the council. I'm Deirdre Henderson. I'm the group leader of the North Tahoe chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. In June of 2017, the Truckee Town Council passed a resolution that asked our Congress to sponsor and support measures that will acknowledge the serious threat posed by climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions in a clear, transparent, and effective way. And earlier this year, when a bill that does just that Citizens Climate Lobby had been working on since 2009, was introduced on a bipartisan basis, you passed a resolution endorsing the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. That's H.R. 763. And we appreciate that you realized that we cannot alone stop the effects of climate change in our community, and we need a bold national policy.
See this amazing beauty, so thank you guys.
We believe in climate change, and we really believe in the effects it will take on our environment if it gets to drastic levels, which it already pretty much is. So it means so much to have your support behind us, and it's so, my experience in Washington made me more inspired to really take action. So thank you so much.
It's kind of amazing to think that you just heard from 3 federal lobbyists. When CCL started to work in 2009 on the goal of getting national legislation introduced that would embody a carbon fee and dividend policy, which is essentially a high leverage, very effective way of pricing carbon, the typical reaction it got was that it is impossible for a bunch of ordinary citizens to get such a significant piece of legislation introduced. And Mark Reynolds, who is CCL's executive director, would typically reply, "My people eat impossible for breakfast." And part of what keeps us eating impossible for breakfast is when courageous public officials like the Truckee Town Council step forward and voice their support. I know that for some of you, doing so pushed you kind of out of your comfort zone, and we're especially grateful to you for taking that leap. As we say in CCL, that's when the magic happens. And of course, Morgan, we know you're leaving us, but we want to thank you especially for all of your constancy and advocacy for climate solutions. In recognition of the Town Council's leadership on climate change, in particular its endorsement of the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, Citizens Climate Lobby of North Tahoe is pleased to present you with this participatory artwork, which is entitled Earthworks. The gallery label for it reads, Earthworks 2019, participatory artwork created with the Tahoe Truckee community, acrylic, spray paint, and graffiti marker on canvas, presented to the Truckee Town Council for its leadership in addressing climate change. With gratitude, respect, and appreciation from Citizens Climate Lobby, North Tahoe Chapter. We hope that you will hang this permanently in Town Hall and that it will be a reminder and an inspiration for us all to continue to work on climate solutions. The creative inspiration behind this piece was the wonderful artist Sarah Smith, and we've invited her here to tell you a little bit about it. Sarah?
Thank you, Deirdre. Good evening. My name is Sarah Smith, and I am a
longtime local artist and the founder of Participation Painting. What participation painting is it is a collective action that people take together to co-create a finished piece of artwork, usually around a theme. And in this case, I was thrilled when the Climate Lobby asked me if I would bring something to Earth Day and invite people to participate and think about what is so precious about the place that we live and what do they want to protect. So that was really the theme of thinking for everybody as they kind of all came in together and worked together. And some people used stencils, some people used graffiti markers. There is drawing in there. There is writing. People have written phrases. Sometimes they've just written their names, or they've it's age ranged from a 2-year-old to 70s. So it is fully inclusive of our community, of our Truckee Tahoe community here, and what people love about this place. So what I'd like to do now is invite the council to come and make your own mark on this painting, because you are a part of this community and you're an integral part of helping to support climate solutions in our region. So thank you very much. And if you would like to, please come.
Thank you, Sarah. We're going to take you up on that right now.
Multiple colors, and all of it, just to make sure that it's good. See, we're asking you all to be really bold because there are stencils right now.
Yeah. Sweet.
Do you know how many people collaborated on this? Did you keep track? Or
I did not. I didn't count. But I'd say probably between 75 and 100 people have added to this.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all for adding to this, because
It's all of us. Thank you, everybody, for adding to this, because it's all of us working together that make our home what it is. It's everybody adding to this painting that makes it what it is. So it wouldn't be the same without everybody making their mark. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Deirdre. Eiley, Saley, and was it Joachim with it. Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you all. That was a terrific presentation. Thank you so much for hand carrying our letter. And Sarah, the artwork is absolutely incredible, meaningful, and we will find a very appropriate spot somewhere here in Town Hall, I'm sure, and would love to hear from the council as well on their thoughts for maybe where to place it and anything else. But thank you very much for the presentation. So at this point, would love to open this up for any council comments or questions, and then after that we'll go to public comment as well.
I was just going to tell Miss Scott over there that we have an opening in a couple weeks on council here. You're a great public speaker, maybe next year, but don't consider it. That Washington passion, it's great. So keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, I always really, really appreciate when we see
students and young people who are really taking some initiative and getting involved and making sure your voices are just as strong as anybody else's. And so really utilizing those, it's impressive, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you. This is amazing. I'm so thankful that you collaborated to put together. I've never heard of participation painting, but what a great idea. And it's absolutely lovely. And when we were over there, I asked Sarah how many people had collaborated to make this art, and it's 70 to 100, anywhere between. I mean, that's a huge number of people who all came together to work on this. It's gorgeous. So I, for one, would love to see it in Town Hall permanently, have a home here. So thank you.
I really want to thank Citizens Climate Lobby. It's really actually an honor for us to have you as part of our community. Deirdre and Janet Atkinson, you have done so much. You continue to bring people in and create interesting conversations about a really pretty tough topic, and bringing in speakers. I wish I could attend more of your chapter meetings. I'm still trying, but great job, meaningful and insightful. I want to invite everybody out here, though, to join us tomorrow night at our, what's it called, Climate Ready Truckee. It's the look at the vulnerability of our community with the potential changes that we could see in our climate. 5:30 tomorrow at the rec center, right? And I really hope that you come, because we need to hear from all diverse groups of our community, and especially our youth, because you're the ones that are going to really see this come to fruition and could actively make a change. So I just really am grateful for the contribution and the continued presence of awareness with greenhouse gas emissions and what that does. And I don't know, we did talk about what Citizen Climate Lobby is particularly lobbying for when we wrote the letter and passed the resolution, but do you want to summarize that for us real briefly?
Thank you for asking. The Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act puts a fee, a gradually increasing fee on fossil fuels as they come into the economy. It starts at $15 per ton of carbon and goes up by $10 per ton every year thereafter. All of that revenue gets put into a trust fund, which every month returns that revenue to American households. That will reduce carbon emissions must reduce carbon emissions according to a scale that's set forth in the Act. It will reduce it by about 40% in the first 12 years over the reference year, which is 2016. So it is a very high leverage national policy. It has some other aspects as well, but that gives you the sort of general overview. This policy has been modeled extensively by now, and it reduces carbon emissions, it increases GDP, it creates jobs, it puts money in families' pockets, and it helps particularly to protect lower income folks from the effects of what inevitably will be increasing energy costs until we start bringing our energy costs down by switching to renewables. So it has lots of wonderful benefits. I just want to tell you a couple things. Quick update on the bill. We're now up to 60 sponsors, 60 co-sponsors. We picked up some of those during our lobby day in June. A number of the sponsors are members of the committees of jurisdiction for the bill, which are Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, and Foreign Affairs. And that's a great sign. We still don't have Republicans. We expect Republicans to sign on, but in case anybody hasn't noticed, it's hard to be a Republican and do anything these days in Congress. But we met with 529 out of a total of 535 congressional offices on our lobby day. We had 1,200 people in our group. And we can say that, Democrats are energized about climate change. They're having all kinds of hearings in Congress. And Republicans are trying to find a way forward on this issue. They know that it is an issue that they have to address. So that's really good news. The other really great development is that the Climate Solutions Caucus, which Citizens Climate Lobby really midwifed back in the 2014 Congress, has reconstituted itself in this Congress. It's so far up to 63 members. All of the Republicans who returned to Congress in this session rejoined the Climate Solutions Caucus, and some additional Republicans also joined, and all of the Democrats who were on it joined, and some others have indicated their interest in joining. They have to find a Republican to pair up with to join. We also have gotten a sort of blizzard of endorsements for the bill from businesses, from NGOs, from public officials, and that's happening very fast. It's hard for us to keep up with them all. But you can go to energyinnovationact.org, and you can see the pages of endorsements that we've gotten, including many from businesses and NGOs in Truckee. So thank you again for your leadership. We really appreciate it. It's a big deal when a local government does something like this.
Thank you, Deirdre.
I just want to say thank you also to Sarah Smith for your time and commitment to this important cause and honoring us with your artwork.
I'll be very brief to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for going to DC. It's a powerful experience, and it does matter. And I think it's very thought stimulating as you think about how to be more effective at making change. And what I wrote on the beautiful piece of art is that hope is contagious. And I think one of the most important things that we can all do is remain very committed to the course of action that will help solve climate change, because it's tempting to be cynical and think that it's too hard and we're not going to make it happen, and that's just not nearly as interesting as being hopeful that we will. So thank you all.
Thank you again. And just, I think this really underscores the importance of acting locally, because if you think about it, if everyone acted locally, the impact that would have across our nation, across our world. So thank you again. At this point, we're going to open this up to public comment. If anyone has public comment on this item, please feel free to step forward. All right. No public comment. We'll close public comment. And thank you again. And we love getting up from the dais and drawing. So really appreciated that. We don't get to do that very often. Thank you.
Dan's going to start making us do that for his presentations.
Okay. Thank you all. With that, we are going to move on to our consent calendar. We've got, I believe, is it one item? One item on the consent calendar tonight, and that is item 6.1, approving the minutes of the June 25th, 2019 and July 9th, 2019 regular and closed session meetings. So would any member of the council care to have this item pulled for discussion? All right. Staff?
No, thank you.
Just noting that I was not at the June 25th meeting, so.
Okay. Thank you, Morgan. Any member of the public care to have this item pulled for discussion? Okay. So I think we are ready now for a motion to approve the consent calendar item.
I move that we approve the consent calendar item.
Thank you, Jessica.
Second.
Thank you, Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Consent calendar item 1, 6.1 carries. All right, at this point, we are ready to move on to our first discussion item tonight, item 7.1, staff report on the 2019 slurry seal project C1901, rejection of bids. Dan, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. So, yeah, this is a recommendation that we do nothing. So I think I can cover that in less than 5 minutes. What's that?
I'm sorry, I was just noting that we do add time estimates to each item now, so thank you.
I appreciate the reminder. Councilmember Pallavi was commenting earlier at how good I am at keeping things brief, so. Part of our annual road maintenance program is to do slurry seals on our streets, which is basically oil emulsion treatment that does a couple of things. It extends pavement life, and it also kind of fills in cracks and makes the street surface a bit smoother, at least to vehicle traffic, than it was before we do a project like this. And we've been doing these for over a dozen years. In the last 2 years, the price of these projects has doubled. So, we saw a significant increase 2 years ago, and we saw a more significant increase this year. I don't necessarily think the cost of this road maintenance strategy is going to go down by waiting and rebidding it next spring. We do think that at these costs, this may no longer be an effective road maintenance strategy for the town to continue to pursue. What our recommendation is to reject the bids at this time. What engineering staff would do is go back and do some technical analysis on the benefit of the slurry seal program as compared to the current cost. We did that a few years ago as part of our pavement maintenance program, and at the prices then, it made sense. At these prices, it's more of a question. And then do one of two things: either come back to you with a recommendation that we change our pavement maintenance program to delete the slurry seal component of it, or come back and identify a price point that we think if it's below that price point and we bid the project again and it comes in under that price point, great. If it comes in over that price point, then we kind of have a decision in the back of our minds that we will be done at that point in time. So the recommendation tonight is that we reject the bids, and then I think what we're doing is informing you that we'd be doing some additional work to reevaluate whether this program makes sense for us going forward between now and our next construction cycle.
Thank you, Dan. Any clarifying questions from council? All right. Jessica?
I just have one, just to be sure I understand. So if our estimate was $1 million for the project and the bids came in at almost 1.4 and almost 1.5, so the $1 million, are we setting that aside for next year? Where's that money going? Where is that money?
So it's in our current road maintenance, a combination of our road of 4 funds. So there's Truckee Special Service Area 1 and Truckee Special Service Area 5, which are funds in Tahoe, Donner, and Glenshire that are used for, among other things, enhanced road maintenance. Some of the money would have been coming from the state. There's some state grant programs that could be used for slurry seal. They could also be used for overlay or other town projects. And there's Measure V funds, which is our half-cent sales tax that's dedicated to road maintenance. So it's a combination of those 4 funding sources that the $1 million would have come from. By not doing this project, that money would effectively stay in the town's account. The grant money that's available at the state would stay with the state, and then if we don't do a slurry seal in the future, we would get that money redirected to another eligible project.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
You good?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just kind of looking at other agenda items and wondering if we can reallocate, $1 million here and put it there, and kind of what. But it sounds like that really needs to stay.
Our
in road
recommendation would be that it
maintenance, or-
stayed until we made the decision after the next round of bids and make a decision whether this is the right. the right way to go.
Right. No, I understand that. Thank you.
Right. And at a high level, what the slurry seal program is doing is it's extending the time period between overlays. So what would probably happen is if we stop doing slurry seals, we may need to start doing overlays more quickly, but that may be a more cost-effective strategy to maintain the road condition that we're targeting.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any other council questions?
What's your anticipated bid date if you're going to do this again next year?
We would target like a February, March bid opening.
Okay, with a hold the price for 60 days, we award it, and then it happens over the summer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, we'll open this item up for public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion, deliberation, a motion.
Yeah, this is an unfortunate fact of construction in this area. We have a limited pool of available contractors, and when there's a market rate increase of a product that we're using, this is what's going to happen. So I appreciate engineering's concern for whether or not this is a beneficial approach. So that shows insight, and I think it's a good time to pause and reflect on that. So I'm in support of the staff recommendation at this time.
Yana? Nodding heads?
Yeah, I'm the same. It's not that often that we see Public Works saying, "Hey, let's not move forward." Nothing first, but you guys, you get things done. You move forward with projects, and so to say, "Hey, wait, hold on a minute. Let's stop and take a look." That caught my attention. I appreciate that. And if it makes sense to try again in the early next year and maybe to reanalyze, it's logical. I don't see any reason why not to move forward that way. So I think it's perfectly reasonable, and I appreciate your attention to the fact that the bids aren't aligned to what the estimate was, and that it is too high, and it's, instead of coming back and saying, "Hey, it's higher than we thought, so can we just spend more money on it?" say, "Well, wait a minute, let's look at it this way instead." I respect and appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, agreed. Not very often we're asked to reject something. It's usually accept something. So sounds like we've got concurrence up here. So do we need to vote on this? Or you have?
Yes.
Okay.
This would be our recommendation.
All right.
Move that we reject the bids for the 2019 slurry seal project and authorize the town engineer to re-advertise the 2019 slurry seal project with the 2020 slurry seal project in the fall of 19 or the spring of 20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Dan, I think that was like 5.5 minutes, so good job.
Make it up.
All right, so at this point, I want to kind of deviate just slightly from the agenda. We're going to go to item 5.2, which was a closed session item, and ask for a report. Sorry?
That's good of you.
Yeah, ask for a report from our town attorney, Andy Morris.
Thank you, Mayor Tierman. The council in closed session did approve the execution of a settlement agreement in which the town will pay the sum of $30,000 to a town employee named John Mompere, who is a police sergeant. In exchange, Mr. Sergeant Mompere will be retiring and releasing any and all claims he might have against the town. And that is the report out from closed session.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. Do we need to open this up for any reason? Or
if there's any public comment, we should take it.
All right. Is there any public comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And thank you again, Andy. We'll now move on to item 7.2. Staff report existing asphalt sidewalk on Donner Pass Road between the Truckee Elementary School, Western Driveway, and Northwoods Boulevard. Dan Wilkins, once again.
Thank you. Time check? No.
You got 30 minutes this time.
Yeah. No problem. So as a part of the annual budget process this year, as we talked about a minute ago, we've had a number of public works projects that we're pursuing this year, and a number of them we got construction pricing on, and they were all significantly above the estimates as a result of various combinations of items. So as a part of your budget process this year, what the council did was effectively take money that had been programmed for construction activity on future years' projects and advance it to the current projects so that they could be fully funded. One of those projects was the Northwoods Boulevard Donner Pass Road roundabout project, which is a part of the larger envisioned Donner Pass Road corridor study and corridor project that has multiple phases to it. So when that action occurred, council asked us as staff to come back and look at the possibility of taking the Donner Pass Road project that's currently under construction, which I'll talk about more in a moment, which is basically to build sidewalks and some pedestrian crossing refuge islands along Donner Pass Road from Highway 89 South to Richards Boulevard, and look at the area where we had planned. We kind of left a block out in the project around where this roundabout was going to be built. Come back to you with recommendations as to whether or not we should expand our current project so that if we don't build the roundabout in the future, we make sure we're satisfied with what we have at that location in the interim time period. So that's what this agenda item is here for in front of you. So I'll get a little more into the details here. So the Donner Pass Road corridor that we're currently working on, this is Highway 89 South, where the cursor is on this side of the screen. And over here, this is the freeway on-ramp at Coldstream Interchange. And this is Northwoods Boulevard. So the school district campus for the elementary school and the high school is here. So that's the general area that we're talking about. This exhibit, the blue lines that you see on the top and bottom of the screen represent locations where we're building new sidewalks. And that's generally locations where no existing sidewalk is currently in place. This area right here is the Northwoods Boulevard Donner Pass Road intersection. So this is where we previously had a project funded to build a roundabout, and then we moved that funding to other projects this year. And I'll get into a little more detail there in a moment. This is a blow up of that area on the most recent Google Earth image that we have. One thing that I'll point out is there's existing sidewalks on all four quadrants of this intersection. So the sidewalk project that's currently under construction would tie into this driveway. So you'd have a new sidewalk here where none exists, and then you'd have the existing sidewalk that would continue to Northwoods Boulevard. You've got a pedestrian crossing at Northwoods Boulevard, and then you'd have the existing sidewalk on the north side of the road that would remain. On the south side of the road, it's tough to see, but there's actually an 8-foot wide asphalt sidewalk along this frontage of the school from Northwoods intersection all the way to the western school driveway, which is a little bit off this map. As a part of the Donner Pass Road sidewalk construction that's currently occurring, that existing asphalt sidewalk from this school driveway, the easternmost school driveway, to the west would be replaced. So in the staff report, I had referred to the western driveway as being the limit of where the sidewalk work would be occurring. That should have said the eastern driveway. So this section of asphalt sidewalk would get replaced under the current contract. This section would not. And then on this quadrant of the intersection, you can see there's a bit of sidewalk right here. that would remain, and then the new sidewalk in the current contract would pick up from there and continue along the school district campus. So the current project that's under construction will result in continuous sidewalk connectivity through both sides of the roadway here. The concrete sidewalks on the north side of the road are in relatively good condition. This concrete sidewalk's in relatively good condition. This asphalt sidewalk's in relatively poor condition. It's fairly old. It's in good enough condition that we could do snow removal on it in the winter. So in terms of maintaining a winter walking corridor along both sides of the road, we would be able to do that. But the surface of this section of sidewalk is relatively poor just because it's older asphalt that's been patched in over time. And so that's the current situation out there. This exhibit is just another exhibit that's describing, it was in your staff report, what would happen with those existing sections of sidewalk with the roundabout project. So again, Northwoods Boulevard, Donner Pass Road. So if the roundabout gets built here, what happens is the roadway edges get changed. And as part of that, you'd have to remove the existing curb and gutter and reinstall the sidewalk. So those areas that were gaps in the sidewalk project that's under construction, but where they're tying into existing sidewalk, those sidewalks would be demoed as part of a roundabout and then replaced with the paver sidewalks that are currently under construction that would be consistent with the roundabout project if that goes forward. So what this exhibit's doing is just identifying the existing concrete and asphalt sidewalk areas that get upgraded as a part of a future roundabout project should that occur. This is a schematic of that roundabout project. If it is funded in the future, again, this would kind of fill in those gaps. So the discussion at the budget workshop was, what if we just leave this as a traffic signal? And if we do, can we do some work this summer as a part of this project to effectively finish the roadway right now, so we don't have to come back and do a follow-up project at some point in the future. So what we've done is we've looked at that, and one of the opinions that we've reached as staff as a part of that follow-up review is that if we're going to leave this as a traffic signal for the long term, we think it's worth spending some time to evaluate whether the current traffic signal we have and the current lane geometry is the best long-term signal and lane geometry for this location. There's things like the way the signal is timed and the number of approach lanes to the intersection that would be worth thinking about if this is going to be the permanent installation. And we haven't done that because up to this point the focus has been on the roundabout. So we haven't really gone through a detailed engineering analysis on leaving it as a signal for the next 15 or 20 years as an example. So our opinion is that if we want to do that, that it would be worth taking time to make sure that the signal project is going to best meet the needs of this location in the long term. And that could result in lane reconfiguration, modifications of lane alignments, et cetera. So should that occur, and should we build new sidewalk this year, we might be building some sidewalk that we would then need to relocate as a part of a signal improvement project should that occur in the future. So I tried to describe that in the staff report that you received earlier on this item. So I think really the question that was asked at the budget workshop is, should we replace this asphalt sidewalk in front of the school with a either concrete or paver sidewalk now as part of this project? Staff's recommendation is that we should not do that because even if we don't build a roundabout here, we think it would be worth taking time to look more closely at a traffic signal, get that fully dialed in, and then should the council decide to just leave this as a traffic signal, make sure that it's the right traffic signal for the long term and that the sidewalk construction that would occur as part of that traffic signal improvement project be done all as a single project. From a rough cost standpoint, we think a roundabout here would cost another $4.5 million from the point we're at today to get completed. We think a signal project here would be in the $1 million to $1.5 million range, and that would include the sidewalk work that would come along with a signal enhancement project. If we just said, you know what, let's not worry about the signal, we can figure that out later, let's just get rid of this asphalt sidewalk right now, let's put in a paver sidewalk now for this section that's the worst section. It's about 330 feet approximately. We think that's in the $550,000 to $700,000 range, and the reason for that range is there are some underground utilities beneath the existing asphalt sidewalk that we're not sure how high they are. The existing asphalt sidewalk sits about 1.5 feet above the road. I think the reason for that is that there's utilities underneath that are high, and that to lower the sidewalk to the road elevation, which is normally where you would want it, you'd potentially need to dig up some utilities and replace them to get them to a lower elevation. We could figure that out through the construction process, but the reason I have a range in terms of the cost of doing this asphalt sidewalk is there are some unknowns with utility relocation that we would be needing to figure out pretty quickly with the contractor if we pursue the asphalt sidewalk replacement right now. So I drug you way into the details on that. Really to pull back out of it, our suggestion is right now that we continue the Envision DPR project that we've already have under contract, that we not amend that contract to tear out this section of asphalt sidewalk and replace it with the paver sidewalk right now. And if you as the council are interested in maybe a higher level of information on what the traffic signal would look like long term, you could give us direction to explore that further between now and your upcoming budget cycle in 9 months or so, or 6 months, so that the level of information we have on the roundabout and the level of information we would have on a signal would be roughly comparable. So if you did want us to pursue that, there is about $300,000 in the budget for the Northwoods Boulevard, Donner Pass Road intersection to do roundabout design there. If you wanted us to take some of that money to flesh out information on what an improved traffic signal, or to confirm that what we've got there is an adequate traffic signal, you could do that, and there's a source of money. Now, if we spent the money to get information on a traffic signal and went and built a roundabout, that wouldn't necessarily be money that's helpful to getting the roundabout done. But if you decide to build a traffic signal, then it's money that would be money well spent and probably better inform your decision on which way to go next year at budget time. So I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Dan. Questions from council?
I'll just mention Dan and I spent a good hour out there today going through all this, looking at some of the different traffic patterns. So I don't have any particular questions to follow up from that, and I'll wait to deliberation. Just wanted to let you all know that I did have questions, but they mostly got answered. So thank you, Dan.
All right. Jessica, anything?
No. I guess the genesis of this is just the awkward and maybe potentially dangerous nature of having the raised sidewalk. And I think that all of the assumptions in here assume that you would lower the sidewalk to ground level.
There could be a solution that leaves it elevated if pulling it down to the lower elevation was going to be cost prohibitive. Mm-hmm. Typically, you would try to keep it at a closer elevation to the street. Helps out with snow removal. If we were going to look at this sidewalk elevation as being the permanent elevation, we'd want to evaluate whether there should be a railing potentially between. I mean, it's been there for a couple of decades as it sits. What's changed is this used to be an island where this was one of the only areas where there was a sidewalk. Now it's going to be an island where it's one of the only areas where there's old sidewalk with a whole bunch of new kind of up to standard sidewalk all around it. So
I guess what I'm asking is, is there an option that is very explicitly a short-term, low cost, low touch improvement, but we're still making some kind of effort to clean up this section?
I think it would be, quite frankly, some pavement work on the surface to touch up the surface. There's some areas where there's some pretty good dips in it, and I think we could do a little bit of work there that would be in the low cost spectrum, in the order of
maintenance.
Yeah, and we could work with the contractor to do some pavement work out there, I think, that would help the situation, that would be on the low cost end of the spectrum, as opposed to something that's intended to be a little more permanent.
Yeah.
Now, Dan was kind enough to spend some time on the phone with me yesterday evening, answered my questions. Thank you.
Dan, do we know how much foot traffic there is between the elementary school or coming from that direction towards the high school?
There's a lot during certain time periods, and I'm being a little cagey because I think I'm optimistic that with the sidewalk projects that's currently under construction, that it's going to result in a significant increase in foot traffic. It's a bit hard to guess how much, but going from what we have now to a continuous sidewalk along that section of roadway, we hope will increase pedestrian traffic.
Okay. And thinking about the traffic signal, some sort of upgrade to that traffic intersection and signalization. Do you have a rough idea of what those improvements might entail?
I've got an idea of the ones we would want to explore.
Okay.
So currently on Northwoods Boulevard, if you're coming down the hill and turning left onto Donner Pass Road, you can make that movement, but coming out of the school district driveway, that traffic can make that through movement, the left turn movement, and the right turn movement at the same time that the Northwoods traffic is going.
I see. Yeah.
And so it creates more opportunity for conflict at the intersection. So there could be changes in signal timing, either so that only Northwoods goes or only the school district driveways goes. They don't both go at the same time. Or you could put in the green arrows. You put in the green arrows, that starts to affect the lane configuration that you've got and whether you can continue to make right turns on red without them being blocked. So as you start looking at the signal timing, it has a reciprocal effect on what the proper lane configuration is at the intersection. And what we haven't done is had the opportunity to measure the traffic coming out of the reconfigured school site. What we're anticipating is that the amount of traffic coming out of that school district driveway is going to increase with the site design that's happened on the school campus. There's fewer and more focused encroachment points onto Donner Pass Road, and this is one of those. It used to be this was mostly school bus traffic with some occasional student and teacher and employee traffic. We think there's going to be more student and other types of traffic at this intersection in the future. And we could go and measure that in September when school's back in session, or later if school district staff still thinks construction activity is affecting traffic in September and whatnot. So anyway, it gets pretty wonky and into the kind of details of traffic signal engineering, but those are some of the considerations that we think would be worth looking at.
Okay, and last question, of the $550,000 estimate for that replacement of the asphalt sidewalk, any sense how much of that would be allocated to utility work, the underground part you were mentioning, versus the actual sort of surface improvements?
So the $550,000 number assumes that we don't have any utility relocation other than adjusting utility lids to the new grade.
Yeah.
If we do have utility relocation, it would be on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And what we know is that we've got water lines, gas lines, and electric lines under
Okay.
that section of sidewalk.
Okay. And I'm sorry, this is really my last question. You're talking about sidewalks being level with the street.
Or 6 inches above it.
Okay, so actually there would be a little bit of elevation. Typically in a typical sidewalk, you'd have curb and then maybe a little bit of elevation, right?
Yeah, and we have different standards on the Donner Pass Road corridor. We actually have it designed so that the sidewalk elevation and the street elevation are the same.
Okay.
So the curb detail that's being used actually doesn't create a vertical grade differential. And I could spend
Okay.
5 minutes on the reasons for that, but that may be more than you want.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay. All right. If there are any one more? Okay.
Yeah, just if I'm looking at the diagram that has the Donner Pass Road and then the school access driveway, and has a representative from the school voiced an opinion on what it would look like or how they feel if we move forward in one direction or another? Because if they're planning their driveway based on a roundabout and then we change that, and I think this has been brought up before, what's the impact? How does the school feel about us changing plans, or what's the impact on their construction that's already been
Right.
invested in?
So what we've done was to meet with the school district facilities staff that's working on the high school project right now, a gentleman by the name of Rob Coster, and to let them know that this conversation was occurring tonight. And my sense from Rob was that he gets that if we're not going to build the roundabout there, that I think he's in agreement that improvements would be great. Some kind of improvement would be great, but I think he was also in agreement that we don't want to do it twice. So the coordination with the school on what if we leave this as a traffic signal, we would need to go through that process, between now and definitely before implementing a project, but potentially between now and your next budget discussions, if you give us direction to kind of tune up what a traffic signal project would look like there. And that would be the time where we would communicate with facilities staff, and Anna suggested making sure we communicate with the transportation staff at the district and other interested parties as well. And so that's when we would suggest that happen.
Okay.
So I think as a general comment, I think they were a little disappointed because we've been working with the school facilities staff for 3 or 4 years towards, their site design has been developed to accommodate a roundabout. There's been, at least within that working group, kind of a coordinated group of projects to make all that happen. They understand financial reality, and I think are dealing with some of the same things on some of the school projects they're working on. And so, they understand that things can change. But I think they're like, oh, geez, we had this figured out, and now we got to go back and talk about it more. Come on, so, yeah.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Any other council questions? All right, we're going to open this item up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and come back to council for discussion deliberations. Dave, do you want to start?
Maybe try to tee us up and at least go through. I wanted to maybe go through 3 things on my end. Thanks to Dan for spending some time out there today. It was good to actually walk that section and sort of see what's going on down there in person. So I was going to kind of start at the ground level and maybe try to finish a little bit higher on those 3 things. So first would be, existing conditions are generally okay, I would say. They're certainly not ideal. It's certainly going to look a lot better everywhere around this intersection. So I would support maybe some use of some contingency funds, or however we want to do it, to at least do some of that fill work. There's some pylon work out there that's definitely I could just see some kids like jumping on that thing and who knows what's going to happen out there. But there's definitely a little bit of just cosmetic work that looks like it could be done, and probably could be done pretty efficiently with the crew that's already out there. I would secondly be in favor as well of taking some of that design money that we do have allocated and looking at a specific traffic signal intersection alignment. I think Dan definitely has a really clear picture of kind of what needs to happen there. I trust his judgment to sort of push to get that done in a way that it's both economical, but also potentially going back to the same design consultant who's already worked on the roundabout and giving us the information that we really need to be able to compare apples to apples when this conversation comes up in the next round of budget discussion, because it's clearly not going to go away. And I think, a small investment to understand what really that difference is going to be in costs, in traffic control, and aesthetics would benefit us when we are going to be making that decision as we move forward. The last piece, which is kind of the biggest picture piece and more was looking to see how you guys all felt about this, would be, we've kind of this is like, at least as I see it, we're kind of going down phase one to get Donner Pass Road up to a really aesthetically pleasing, safer, more functional roadway. And there's a few more projects. Envision DPR East would continue all of this. We've got the Donner Pass Road, Frady's Lane roundabout as another piece of this. And then we have this intersection kind of right in front of us. And to me, as a decision maker, they all seem really important actually, and they all kind of contribute in different ways to Donner Pass Road in general. And so knowing Envision DPR East is not really even in our 5-year planning horizon. Same thing with the roundabout at Frady's Lane, not even really in our 5-year planning horizon. This Northwoods intersection within the horizon, but potentially could see some cost savings, et cetera. So, I just talked about with Dan a little bit today was, and the detailed information on the cost doesn't necessarily need to go to the public, but at some point sort of bringing this process back to the public, whether it's via the general plan conversations or, maybe just a couple of minor workshops to say, what is most important? How would the community rank some of these really large infrastructure projects if we were going to go 1, 2, and 3, trying to get some community input? So as we're sitting here and we're deciding between $1 million or $1.5 million for traffic control, $5 million for a roundabout, and we're really very microcosmically looking at this one minor intersection, do we want to think a little bigger, continue those roadway improvements to Donner Pass East? Maybe that's more important to the community to have a really consistent look. So while it's not necessarily pertinent to tonight's decision, I think my first point was, I think my second point was, and my third point would more just be sort of some overall direction to provide back to staff of helping us make a more informed decision is sort of how I was thinking about that whole process. So that was my 1, 2, and 3, starting really at the ground level and trying to think a little bit bigger too. So there you go.
Thank you, Dave.
Sure. That was really well said. I think that it all makes logical sense to spend some money now to ensure safety and sidewalk integrity, minor improvements. Also, I've kind of had my heart set on the roundabout, maybe just because psychologically we've been talking about it for so long and planning for it and thinking about it. And so that's kind of what I had in mind, and knowing that we have other agencies that are also kind of coming from that same place, that to what feels like a bit of a sudden shift, and I know we've spoken about it in depth and we'll continue to speak about it, but to change from the roundabout to the traffic light, I feel like, and I actually wrote down one of my notes, is spending some money to ensure that we make a highly confident decision around it. So for me, it would make sense to really look at in detail what a traffic signal would look like and what it would cost, and we're not going to be making a final decision on either of these before the next budget session anyway. And so for me, I would rather spend some money now for the insurance that we are highly confident that we are making the right decision overall for in the big picture as far as how we move forward. As of right now today, if there was a way to just make the roundabout work, I would love to do it, but unfortunately it's that money thing. So so that's where I'm at, and I would be okay with spending some money. Now, part of me feels like, well, the sidewalks have been there for 20 years. They've been okay. What's the big deal? But if it's really become a gaping wound that we need to put a Band-Aid on, then it's worth it to doctor up the sidewalks a bit.
As you know, I have some thoughts on this. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at this, well, I've been driving this intersection for the entire time I've been here. I use all four sides of it. From the district, or from the high school parking lot, I will often turn right to go back into the district office or turn left to go home. And that is kind of a scary spot, particularly how it's signaled right now. And then we have been coordinating for quite some time with the school district. And just to give you kind of a sense of that, one of those graphics that you showed of the roundabout, the district office is actually still on that graphic. Yeah. So, I mean, that's how long we've been working on this intersection collaboratively. I did in our budget session express my concern about leaving that sidewalk, particularly if it's for more than a year or two. It is going to be painfully obvious to everybody that we missed a spot. And we're going to hear about it. So we need to be prepared for that, if that's what we're going to do. And I believe we can get away with doing that as long as there is an understanding that we really shouldn't leave it in its existing condition for more than a year or two. Those are my thoughts specifically on the task at hand right now, which is whether or not we're doing anything with that sidewalk. Now, the roundabout is a very different discussion, and I think we'll have plenty of opportunity to pontificate and opine about that. But my 2 cents on that is this intersection is dangerous. It is a very, very active intersection in our community, probably only second to some of the downtown intersections in 89, because it receives all the people coming to and from Tahoe-Donner. And then, of course, it is the student parking lot, so a lot of traffic coming in and out of there for the high school, and now all of the elementary school and high school buses as well. So leaving it as is not an acceptable solution. We definitely, I think, all understand that there's either some signaling that needs to happen, but the more I look at the intersection, the more I really feel like the safest solution is a roundabout. But I absolutely agree that we need to look at this holistically, like Councilmember Pahlavi explained, with all the other priorities. But it needs to be prioritized. We need to do that within the next year or so we can plan accordingly, so we don't leave this intersection in its current state any longer than we have to. And I would even recommend that we do something on the interim, like a no right turn on red or something, because that traffic coming down Donner Pass Road, they often don't stop. And the traffic coming off of the school district property don't think they need to stop either. It is a great opportunity for vehicle conflict. Those are my 2 cents.
I think I agree with what's been said. I think any kind of stuff this year would be very minor. It sounds like almost not worth mentioning. I think that studies of the signal is probably a good use of time and energy to get ready for the budget process. And I think that I don't know, I feel like there's sort of a larger philosophical, maybe inflection point, or at least check-in with the community on our commitment to roundabouts as the way to go. Just given the cost, I think that sort of like the slurry seal project that we looked at, it's something that makes a lot of sense at one price point, and at another price point, it starts to, the opportunity costs of what we could be doing for housing, for example, starts to really feel tight. But I think I'm in agreement with what's been said, so I'm not going to repeat it.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar spot. I happened to drive by there today, and I did see you gentlemen out there. I refrained from honking, but anyway, I do agree that the sidewalk needs some minimal improvement, maybe some kind of surfacing. I recall that when we did the downtown Donner Pass Road project, prior to actually putting in the pavers, there was a time where some of that sidewalk was redone. It was painted red, something along those lines. Maybe not painted red, but at least some minimal resurfacing there to improve the look. Definitely would be worthwhile. Going down Dave's sort of 3 points, also agree that some study of the traffic signal makes sense. Do you have a sense of what that would cost? Dan, just to do some sort of a study?
I've got a sense. I told Dave today it would be more than a few $1,000s and less than $250,000, so it's in that range.
Okay.
It should be 5 digits or less.
Okay.
What I would say is that there's a threshold of doing a contract. If it's under $50,000, it's administrative. If it's over that, it would need to come back to you as a council. So if what I'm hearing is interest from the council in looking a little more closely at a traffic signal, pros and cons, how we could improve it, if that direction is what we end up with, we would go to the consultant team we've been working on this corridor with, get a proposal from them. I think if it's under the $50,000 level, based on what I've heard, I think we could just move forward and make it happen. If it was over that, we would check in with you, and you'd have a chance to really decide how much is it worth to look at this traffic signal, and how much detail do we want to look at it in.
Okay. Yeah, and in my opinion, I think long term, the roundabout makes sense. I agree with what Anna was saying about that. And I think, Jessica, you may have said that as well. And that was when we approved the Donner Pass Road, Envision Donner Pass Road project. Originally the roundabout was part of that vision.
Yeah.
So, bearing in mind that we reallocated some dollars to make another project happen in another part of town, I think, it may very well be that this intersection ends up being signalized for, 5 to 10 years, would be my guess. If I had a crystal ball, I would sort of project out that far. So I think it would make sense to, spend the dollars to do a study on how to improve the signal and what's there today to make it function better. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I have another a question. Something, Anna, you just said really caught my attention about the safety level of the intersection, and that's something I try to be highly aware of and concerned with. I had a relatively long meeting a while back around traffic flow with Chief Leftwich and with Dan. How dangerous is the intersection, and what can we do to make sure that it is, if it is realistically an unsafe intersection, what can we do in the immediate future to enhance the safety level of it?
The thing that we could take a look at is changing the phasing. So it would degrade the traffic operations a bit, but we could look at doing a short-term modification of phasing so that when the Northwoods traffic is going, you have a red ball coming out of the school district, and vice versa, that when you've got a green light on the school district side, you wouldn't have traffic exiting from Northwoods. What that will do is you'll end up with more stop time on Donner Pass Road, so that would be the trade-off. But that's something we could take a look at that wouldn't require a whole lot of other physical improvements. It would be going in and adjusting the signal timing if we're comfortable that we don't create problems on Donner Pass Road by solving problems on Northwoods and the school driveway. So that's something we could look at pretty quickly.
So I don't want to speak for the chief, but we have not had a history of a high amount of collisions at that intersection. But like Dan pointed out, we also have a change in the dynamic at that particular intersection with potentially more teenage drivers going through it, et cetera. But, we have not had the history of accidents that would indicate that there's a problem there currently.
And more broadly, I don't think that staff believe that any intersection or street in town is dangerous. I'm not sure that we would ever admit that that's the case. We don't think it's the case. And certainly we think that both staff and council should be very wary about ever describing any town-owned facility as dangerous, because that can create liability for the town if there ever were to be an accident.
To enhance the safety of the, further improve and enhance, to ensure the ongoing safety of the intersection. I know that's not on the agenda, but I think that maybe in the future that would be something worth exploring and bringing back.
Okay, any other feedback from council? Dan, do you have direction you feel?
I do. So there's no action that we need from you. We just didn't want to be in front of you with our notice of completion on the Donner Pass Road project in November and have someone ask why we didn't come back to you and talk about the sidewalk issue. So we've done that. I think I've got the direction from the council in terms of what information you're interested in, and I think we can move forward from there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. All right. Let's see. With that, we're ready for item 7.3, which is town manager pay increase resolution. Kim, you're going to walk us through that.
I promise I'll be shorter than Dan. So the council met in closed session at your last town council meeting and did a performance appraisal with our town manager, Jeff Lux. And as required, we are bringing back a proposed change in his pay in open session. And so our recommendation, what council instructed me to do was to prepare this, and his pay change is equivalent to what any other employee in the town of Truckee would receive under our pay for performance program. And then you also agreed to a small modification to his employment contract, which I included in your package, which was to add an additional 40 hours of vacation accrual to his accruals. So what I am recommending is that you consider approving Resolution 2019-42, adopting that pay change.
Thank you, Kim. Are there any questions from council?
During that closed session, we had discussed having a goal setting session as a follow-up. And I know Jeff has been out of the country, but do we have that planned for sometime in the future?
We do not at this time. We've discussed that with the mayor, and I think we will make a decision on whether we're going to go forward with that or not. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. That's certainly something that I know Jeff is open to, and we could certainly do that. The other option was for council members to go to him individually, and because he did outline some goals in the document that he provided to us, and there may be an opportunity to do that on a one-on-one basis, or do it as a group in a closed session. So certainly either one of those options is available to us. Closed session, I think the next one is August 13th. There are, I understand, a couple of items already for that 1 hour. So it may be a little constrained, thinking about how long it took us to think about our council goals. So, it's really at the pleasure of the council, whichever you would prefer, but you can certainly do it one-on-one, or we could try to carve out, it would be probably 20 minutes, I think, realistically, unless we met earlier on the 13th.
Looking for our feedback there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we discuss that now?
Sure.
Oh,
I mean, I'm open to whatever you guys want. I sort of, we can't share our own. Well, did you share some? You shared everything, right? When we did the evaluation. So, I personally just redlined his goals and put my 2 cents in there, and I've had a meeting with Jeff and followed up, and we sort of chatted with that, and at least I'm personally comfortable with that. If we want to bring that back to a closed session, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at the last meeting, at the next meeting. If we want to just, when we do have some space on a closed session in the next month, or for between now and the next 3 meetings, I'm certainly open to that. But at least I feel like I've said my 2 cents. So.
Yeah, I'm also happy to collaborate on a goal setting session in closed session. I don't feel like I have a strong need to, and I'm fine with also doing one-on-ones as needed with Jeff. So it's really, I'm fine either way. If we want to make the time for it, I'm happy to show up and maybe come a little bit early to closed session next meeting.
I think the meta point is that we can all sort of take the note of how to structure those evaluations and make the time and make sure that we are getting what we want out of the time. And in my 5 years on council, I think we've had an interesting kind of variation of what those evaluations look like. I think when Tony had a few months left before his retirement, it was a very cursory evaluation. And so obviously the process has varied depending on what's going on. I'd be delighted to just you and I could sit down with Jeff and keep talking if it doesn't seem like the council has the space on our upcoming schedule or kind of a burning need to get into this further. So, I don't know. But I'm also happy to, certainly if on my one last meeting, if we squeeze it in. So,
Well, on our little mural there, what I wrote was better together. And I really believe that we are better as a unified council. As our goals show, we were very unified. I would like Jeff to have a clear set of goals that we are also unified on. So that would be my preference, that we could calendar something, that we could make sure that what I am asking him to spend his time and energy on is not in conflict with somebody else's expectations. I think we'll have a much more effective town manager if our personal goals for him are also unified like our council goals.
I would only add that, and Morgan, I totally want to include you or not, it's totally up to you, but I would say 15 minutes is not sufficient to do that in. And if we're going to do that, I'd rather give it enough time that we can actually get through it and have a productive discussion where we could spend 30, 45 minutes, talking about that. So if we're going to do that, which I 100% fully support, let's find a time that it fits on an agenda where we have a little space, would be my suggestion.
I also think it might, no offense, Morgan, we love you dearly, but it might make sense if we're going to be a unified council with our town manager to let our new council member have a voice in that conversation as well. So maybe giving them a little bit of time to get on board and come up to speed, and then be able to also align so that they're able to have a fair say.
This all sort of makes me think that for next year and maybe beyond, that when we do town manager evaluations, that we have a specific section dedicated to goals for the coming year, so that the manager, perhaps is something that is formally filled out, and that as part of our evaluation, we are talking about that during that 1 hour that we're having that closed session. So.
Yeah, we can certainly make that modification, and maybe I can even figure out some way to do a template that aligns with your council goals, and then we'll set aside some additional time, I would think.
Okay. Well, Anna, I appreciated your comments and thoughts on that. I think that makes a lot of sense. But then again, going back to what Dave was saying, coming together is going to take some time. We may not all see eye to eye on everything, and just as it took us a day or 2 days to come up with our council goals, I think really honing in on our town manager goals would probably take at least a good hour. But I certainly would support doing that if we want to set a session to do that. Probably won't be on the 13th. Sorry, Morgan, unless we're able to.
Jessica made a good point.
All right. Okay. All right. So any other? We sort of combine what questions and. Or no, this was deliberation, right? I can't remember. Anyway.
I don't think we've officially said public comment yet on this one.
I don't think we have yet, or have we?
I don't think we have.
We have not, okay. Those were questions, but it was kind of question and deliberation combined. So unless there's anything else, we'll open this up for public comment. Jim, Zach, anything? No? Okay. We're very informal here, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for direction.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2019-42.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Okay, with that, we are on to, I believe, council reports. So why don't we start over here, Hannah?
Well, yesterday, Councilmember Pallavi and I attended the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting on behalf of the Truckee Fire Protection District, and I'm very, very pleased to report that Placer County is going to consider the tax revenue for the Martis Valley to go to the Truckee Fire District. Well deserved. It was actually very well attended, too, and they had some of the really interesting items on the agenda, including many things we're dealing with, like emergency preparedness and wildfire prevention. I also attended a webinar on the California Green New Deal that I thought was very informative, and took some real interesting pieces of knowledge from there that I hope to use. I attended the most recent GPAC Climate Subcommittee meeting on Friday the 12th, where we gathered a lot of information about potential additional stakeholders that we need to bring into that committee. We reviewed the greenhouse gas inventory from 2008 to 2016 and did what I thought was some great brainstorming around what we could do specifically in the town of Truckee for greenhouse gas emissions. And for me, that's where all the magic is. It was very great to get to that point in that subcommittee, and I appreciate all the time and energy that town staff put into that. It was really well done. And then lastly, I participated in the Donner Lake Triathlon as a cyclist in a co-ed relay team on Sunday. And every time I do that, I'm just amazed at how many people are there from all over the world, not just California or around. People come from all over the world to do the Donner Lake Triathlon and enjoy our beautiful lake and our amazing summit. And it was really heartwarming.
Thank you, Anna. Vice Mayor Goodwin.
Let's see. Last week, I attended a really interesting webinar on housing underproduction in California. Basically talking about the environmental and fiscal impact of really leaning into the transit-oriented development. It was a couple of very credible economists, and it was the first time I'd ever seen modeling done at the state level of what it would actually look like to build enough housing to solve the statewide housing shortage. I mean, the numbers that you get into there are really mind-boggling, and basically making the case that the way of developing housing, smart growth close to transit, is not only better for the environment but also much better for the fiscal health of our cities, as well as the overall jobs and GDP growth. So I'd never seen just everything pulled together like that. And then last week I filled in for the mayor and posed for some photos at the groundbreaking of the new building that's going in behind the Rock, or as part of the Rock. It's going to be a 2-story commercial building, sort of 1.5-story commercial building. Sotheby's, I believe, real estate office, and then also a sort of coffee kiosk cafe kind of option there. So off and running.
Thank you, Morgan. Councilmember Abrams.
I enjoyed being a Truckee citizen. My mother was in town, and so we brought my children. We did music in the park. We did Truckee Thursdays. We did the carnival. We did the air show. And then we went to the beach on Sunday. So it was a nice, fun, relaxing experience having her in town. And then earlier today, Judy Price and I did a video conference call with Brian Snyder and Anna Acton from Freed to prepare for a conference, Aging and Disability Conference, that I'm going to be attending and speaking as a panelist on. So that's going to be an interesting experience coming up this next week.
Thank you, Jessica. Councilmember Pallavi.
Thank you for doing that, Jessica. Stepping up. We all got that one. Yes, with Anna, along with Kim and Danielle and Chief Leftwich, we were at the Placer Board of Soups meeting yesterday, so that was good. I read our letter of support and added a little bit of color commentary. Kim and I also were at the T-Bid renewal meeting, probably 7 or 8 folks from the Chamber and T-Bid, along with Kim and myself. Hillary was also a part of that, but she's been on vacation. She'll be rejoining our group here soon. That was it was right after our Tuesday night meeting, so it was immediately, it was after we adopted the ballot measure study. And so it was interesting. It was a very good conversation that brought up a lot of questions, I think, for both sides. So those conversations will be continuing. And then I also attended the chamber board meeting, kind of gave them a similar rundown along with some of the active projects in town. And they had a number of questions, and that was another good conversation. And then also did some of the wonderful things that our community has to offer as well. So that's the past 2 weeks for me.
Thank you, Dave. July 13th, attended the Truckee Air Show, which was fantastic. Fantastic community event. Terrific World War II vintage planes on display. So fantastic once again. Had a meeting with the library working group, and this is a working group focused on what can be done to the existing library to improve it while we're waiting for a new library to actually happen. So that was a good meeting about a week and a half ago. Yesterday was the Sister City Committee meeting, yesterday evening. We are kind of zeroing in. We've got one, community high on the list. We've got the mayor of Canmore, who's going to be visiting Truckee in October. So more to come on that, and we still have some dialogue with the community of Zakopane in Poland as well. Saturday, I attended the dedication of a pavilion, sort of an artwork that made use of steel from the Oakland Bay Bridge at the regional park, and it's serving sort of as a depot for the small train track that goes around the regional park, put on by the Truckee Historical Society. Mountain Forge designed the pavilion. Beautifully done, beautifully done. They had a structural engineer involved. Caltrans was in attendance, the Historical Society, and many other people. I'd say, close to maybe 100 people gathered there. And if you get a chance to go by there and take a look, it's very, very impressive. Truckee's only one of 2 communities in the state thus far that have received steel from the old Oakland Bay Bridge to reuse and put into either artwork or architecture. So yeah, it's really, really amazing. And then, 14th of July, I celebrated Bastille Day. So there. And that's my report.
In the official capacity, isn't it?
Yes. All right, so I think with that, we are ready to adjourn, and our next meeting will be on Tuesday, August 13th.